Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I'm your host, DelSheree Spinner, and I am a novelist and a very tired teacher at this point, wrapping up the year as we're recording this. I'll hopefully be on summer break and relaxing by the time this airs, and we'll also be close to the release date for the new book that we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited to have back on the show Scott Graham, and we're going to be talking about his upcoming book, Great Sand Dunes Massacre. Scott, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Scott. I'm just north of you, DelSheree, in Durango, Colorado. And I am happy to be coming out with what is number 10 in my National Park Mysteries series with publisher Torrey House Press. This one I think is going to be a lot of fun for folks to read. It's set in a park that I've loved for a very long time because it's not too far away from me here in Durango in southern Colorado in the middle of the San Luis, well, at the edge of the San Luis Valley, where the sand gathers from the wind that is ever presently blowing across the beautiful valley floor of the San Luis Valley. And in those dunes, skullduggery occurs as it tends to in my murder mysteries. And in this case, we've got my archaeologist protagonist, Chuck Bender, and his 15-year-old now stepdaughter, Rosie, in the park. Chuck there to be doing an archaeological survey on some new land that's been added to the park for water future preservation purposes for the park. So we're talking about some of those issues in the story. And Rosie is there for a young filmmaker program in the park. And their two worlds kind of collide when nefarious deeds begin to occur, and the story takes off at a gallop from there.
Well, and it's kind of funny because I think the last time you were on the show and we were chatting, you'd mentioned this was the one you were working on. And I was like, oh, we're planning to go there and we're going to see the sand dunes. Because even though I don't live that far from them, I've seen them as we've driven through Colorado, but we've never actually stopped and gone. And we still haven't because we had some illness and some other things come up and we didn't make it last summer.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's nice always, anticipation is one of the wonderful things that we have in this world. And so then you're anticipating a good thing, I can tell you that.
Yeah, we will make it there eventually, but yeah.
It's a fun place. It's fascinating because it's kind of otherworldly. The road that takes you into the park goes what you think of as behind the dunes. So between the dunes and the mountain range against which the dunes kind of work up against. And so you just kind of, although you're not that far from Alamosa and not that far from Front Range in Denver, Colorado, you kind of, it's like you're on this dead end road that just kind of takes you into this whole netherworld space. The dunes are literally the highest dunes in North America. I think they're 700 feet high, the highest dune from above the valley floor. And so you're kind of going behind this small mountain range of sand, and the whole mind game of it is just, I gotta say, really fun.
That sounds really cool. And I really enjoyed your descriptions reading through the book. And it's kind of the last one my mind's blanking, of course. The ones in southern Utah, I've been to those ones. We've been to White Sands. Sure. And so it's like, all right, we need to get the last one in this area.
Exactly. Especially if you've already been to White Sands, then you can do a compare and contrast.
Yeah. The coloring, it is so interesting at the different ones because they're all different. And just depending on what's there in the area and just the experience of being in sand dunes in the middle of just kind of what feel like really random places.
Exactly. And what's fun about my writing my mysteries, I hope to make fun for readers, is that I do try to get into the geology and the geography of the space that each of these parks occupy. And so in the case of the Great Sand Dunes, I think, a fun time telling people about what I think is really fascinating, which is that the whole reason these dunes are there is because there's Medno Creek, which comes out of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And basically the sand is being blown across from west to east across the pan flat San Luis Valley floor. And when it kind of crawls into the creek carries the sand back around and out into the front of the dune field. And then when the creek dries out and goes underground, those sand particles then blow back up into the dunes. And so it's in that process that the dunes have grown over eons. And so you've basically got a creek that makes the dune field possible. Otherwise, the sand would just blow on into the mountain, gone in an instant. So I talk about this beautiful creative process that creates the dunes, and then about the danger to those dunes if the underwater aquifer into which Medno Creek subsides is endangered, which it is in these days. And so all of that, I think, is, I hope, of interest and will be interesting to the readers, while they're also having a great time, I hope, read what is meant to be a real entertaining and fun murder mystery.
Yeah, I had actually wondered about that many times. Like, how do these not just blow away? Like, how are they still there? So, and
Right.
for some
Yeah.
reason, I never looked it up, but this was really informative. It answered a question I've had for probably over a decade.
There you go. And that's my goal. Honestly, what I try to do with each of these books, because like I say, there are 10 of them out there now, is look at a park, study up on the park, visit the park, and then share with readers what I think is interesting, because I hope that what I find interesting, readers will find interesting as well. And I'm looking for some of those less known pieces about parks that I find fascinating, and that therefore I hope other readers and other people will just find interesting when I tell them about it in the midst of this story that's ongoing.
Yeah, I don't want to give any spoilers, but you get into some of the weather dangers in this area
Exactly.
because it's a very unique. It's this valley surrounded by mountains, and then you've got these, like you said, 600-700 foot dunes, and that was something that I had never considered. That being a particular danger of dealing. It's the highest point within a low area in these mountains,
Exactly.
and that
Yeah.
creating a really significant lightning danger.
Right, precisely. And in my case, of course, with all my books, I'm always looking for new ways to kill people in national parks. And in general, the ways that people die or can be murdered in national parks often have to do with gravity, right? Being pushed off of cliffs by bad people, or getting caught in rapids as the river is coursing downhill in the Grand Canyon, or whatever it may be. And in this case, for a long time, I've wanted to find a way to involve lightning in my murder mysteries. And without giving away too much, the other thing I wanted to talk about were fulgurite, which are the glass tubes that get formed when lightning smacks into a sand dune, which is, again, this completely unique phenomenon to only sand dunes, where if a lightning strike hits sand, then the electrical charge melts the sand into a tube of glass that if you then dig it up, it's underground, of course, under the sand, but there's this beautiful tube of glass, sand glass, that gets created by a lightning strike. And I wanted to talk about that as well. That combo of trying to be able to use lightning as a potential murder weapon, and then also wanted to talk about this unique phenomenon called fulgurites, then literally drove kind of how I set up the plot of the book.
I had fun with that too. It was some rom-com movie I watched forever ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd been introduced to that idea of the sand when lightning strikes it. In whatever the movie was, he was doing it intentionally. Like, he'd set up things to attract the lightning to a spot. And then how he set up the little things created different patterns. And so he'd get different shapes of the glass when the lightning struck, which I thought was really interesting, but also seemed quite dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I don't know if this is worth it for art, but...
Yeah, and you might also have to wait quite a while, too, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like, well, he's, I don't know, really dedicated to this, I guess.
Right, exactly.
But it was fun to see it come up in this again. And then to think, like, that with it being a sand dune, how that would come together differently. And it being a tube rather than in whatever that movie was, kind of like, almost like a tree-looking shape, all kind of spiraled out everywhere. It was interesting.
Oh, fascinating. Huh. Oh, that's great. Well, and again, I appreciate hearing that, because that's what I hope, is that my books will engender other thought in folks, and hopefully send them off to the internet to kind of study up on, oh, is this really true? And did this really happen? Or could this really work? I always try to take readers into situations that may be just not quite, a little over the top fantastical, but maybe not quite, so that I hope they'll go off and then learn more about the park, or learn more about the situation I'm presenting, because that's what I have so much fun doing when I'm writing these books and preparing to write these books, is that research. And that's why in the back of each of these books, I have a further reading page where I talk about some of the reading I've done that I've found fascinating, some of the books I've read that I point people toward if they're wanting to do more deeper kind of research type reading as well.
Well, that's funny. One of the units we're wrapping up at the end of the school year is sources and research. And for some reason, we had to do it at the end of the year this year. And it's a hard one to end on, because it's like, what? We have to learn MLA and research things. And students are like, no, I don't want to do that. But if it's something you're interested in, then research can be really fun and you can learn a lot of cool stuff.
Absolutely. Or if you can use researching to put off the actual writing, which of course is what all of us writers do.
True, yes.
In that case, it makes researching really fun, believe me.
Yeah, I know. I have like at least, I think, 4 right now tabs open about human sacrifice in Mesoamerica. So yeah, I get that totally.
Yep.
Well, and
Yeah,
with this one,
which reminds me of Saguaro Sanction, book that I wrote that's set down in Saguaro National Park. And yes, I did some research about that exact topic
mhm,
for that book.
it's pretty fascinating, the cultural differences over a few
It
millennia.
is, yeah, yeah. I think it's fortunate that we don't throw our young people into volcanoes, or in the case of I think the Mesoamerica folk, it was the water. I can't remember the name of them,
Oh
but
gosh,
the
yeah,
kind
I'm
of the
blanking.
bottomless water holes that they
Hmm.
would throw their young people down into, appease the gods.
Yeah, we've come a ways since then, so our young
Yeah,
people
in
are
some
slightly
ways.
safer from sacrifice, but a whole host of other problems.
Exactly. Yeah, we have figured out gunpowder, however. So
Yeah,
okay.
and drugs
Which I
and
will
all
say
that.
is that's one of the things I enjoy doing in my books is trying to avoid gunfire as much as possible. It's kind of like
Mm,
it's easy to use guns, and I do. It's hard to avoid them in murder mysteries, believe me. But it's also kind of something I enjoy doing is staying away to the extent that I can from kind of the gun culture part of our world in America here, and having fun with other murderous opportunities that are out there, so that it becomes an entertainment without it necessarily always being tied to, say, gunfire or gunpowder.
well, if you ever need some crazy creative ideas, there's a podcast I listen to called Small Town Murder, and
Ooh,
there is just the wildest stuff that happens in those, and people getting killed with all kinds of crazy things. There was a combine
there
not
you
too
go.
long ago.
Yep. Well, and I'll tell you what, national park aficionados out there who may have that same kind of twisted bent that it sounds like both you and I have might enjoy listening to Park Predators, the podcast that basically, not dissimilar to, it sounds like the Small Town Murder podcast you listen to, is a woman who basically tells the true crime stories that occur in the national parks and breaks them down. And so, again, I've used it to look for good ways to kill people in national parks.
Interesting. I'll have to look that one up. That does sound really fun.
Yeah, she's been doing it for a while. There are a lot of episodes out there.
Good
Yep.
to know. Well, and you bring in a couple of other topics that I wanted to ask you about as well. One
Sure.
being some of the history of Colorado that's not so glorious and lovely, and then
Right.
also the film. And so I wanted to ask you how you got interested in the film side of it, 'cause you always have kind of like a dual thing going on in most of your books where he's
Sure.
doing his research, Chuck, and then something else is going on alongside it. And so what
Right.
led you to film in this one?
Well, I'll back up to say to listeners that the books are a family-oriented type of murder mystery series where Chuck Bender, the archaeologist, at the beginning of the series, has married a woman who has two daughters, and so he's been a long-time bachelor. She's a single mom, has been a single mom. They team up. He's figuring out how to be a dad to these new stepdaughters that have kind of come in very quickly and unexpectedly into his life, and so that's one of the themes that then runs through these 10 books is that the books take place kind of several months apart, so that the family's growing older. The daughters are growing from adolescence into teenagerhood at this point, 10 years later. And I had the great good fortune of being an at-home dad to two sons for a number of years while my wife was bringing home the bacon as a physician working. And so I was able to stay home. And so I've kind of got this fun family background where I got to raise kids, and I've had fun sharing kind of some of my adventures and misadventures as an at-home dad through this series, through Chuck's point of view. Which brings me to say then specifically for this book that one of our two sons got really involved in filmmaking when he went off to college, and then worked as a documentary filmmaker. And so I got to watch by osmosis, learn a little bit about the whole filmmaking process, which to me is fascinating. So I've been looking for something for Rosie, the younger daughter, to get hooked on as the series has progressed. Her sister Carmelita, the older sister, has kind of been one of the leader of the pack daughter, she's out there getting straight A's, and she's this really great rock climber. And then in the last book prior to this one, Death Valley Duel, she suddenly flips over and becomes this great ultra trail runner. And Rosie just kind of drifted along in her sister's wake. And I thought, okay, it's time for Rosie to have something that really just piques her interest. So I had her discover filmmaking. She gets to go to this film program. And so it gave me the opportunity to really explore Rosie's character a little bit more, because she's a really fun character. I wanted to share more of her with readers, but also get to share some of this that I'd learned about filmmaking from watching my son in that realm. And so that was where the combination came from that had filmmaking become part of this book.
Well, and it's something that I think a lot of young people today are interested in just for the fact that they're so inundated with it. And
Right.
everything with marketing is trending toward video and
Right.
how to get attention on TikTok and different things like that. So I liked that this one brought in something that is currently really present in the culture of young people, particularly, to
Great.
draw them
I'm
in
glad
and
to hear that
get them
because,
going.
yeah, absolutely. And it was fun to share that. I think that it is. It's going to just video is at the fingertips of everyone today. And that is scary, I think, to some of us of a certain age. It certainly is to me. But to see the rich abandon with which the younger generation is adopting it and just playing with it on places like TikTok. We hear about all the dangers of social media, which are true, and the overuse and the screen time, all of which are true. At the same time, the creativity that you see unleashed in young people on places like TikTok and Instagram blows my mind. I have great respect for it. You look at the effort that they put into the work they are doing, this creative effort, and I have nothing but respect for that end of it. So it's like everything, every new technology is a two-edged sword, but there are so many benefits of it and it's something that I saw from my son for sure. And I wanted to share that side of it as well with readers.
Well, and it can be something that leads people into learning about something else, which, like I said, I liked that this had something for younger readers. They could be like, oh, I'm interested in film. Because it was kind of funny, just
Sure.
like, who knows what day it is at this point? But I was showing them a piece of artwork from Norman Rockwell of Ruby Bridges, the first Black student to integrate schools in Louisiana. And they had no idea who Norman Rockwell was, but they did know who Ruby Bridges was because she has TikTok.
She does.
I was
today.
like, wait, really? And they're like, yeah, I've seen her on TikTok. I was like, I had no idea. I'm going to go look her up now.
Oh, that is wonderful. I love it.
I was really glad to know that they knew something about a historical person because most of the time I'm like, what do we know about the Cuban Missile Crisis? They're like, what? How did missiles get in Cuba, New Mexico? Wrong Cuba, guys.
Exactly. Yeah, it's good to hear that Ruby Bridges out there is doing that. And it's certainly something that all of us as writers are encouraged to do these days by our publishers, is to be out there a little bit more and be willing to talk and share our lives and our stories with people on social media. And I say part of that is from watching my kids embrace social media in a comfortable, positive way.
And I think the more people who try to use it for positive purposes, it's a hard battle to win. But I think if that's more of the content that shows up rather than the doing crazy things and hateful stuff, then maybe we can slowly push things more in that direction. That would be nice.
Couldn't agree more.
Now, and the other thing I wanted to chat with you about is the history that you bring into this book.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
This has been a big thing with my class this year. We've looked at a lot of different historical injustices that have gone on throughout history, most of which they've never heard of. And then kind of at the end of the year, we're wrapping it up with how do we tie it to things that are going on today? Because even though they're like, why do I have to care? I don't want to watch the news. I'm like, well, because you guys are kind of the next group of people who have to deal with all of this. And
there you go.
Let's do better, hopefully. And you bring up several instances of Colorado history that, are not the positive things. And I think it's so important that people are aware of the darker parts of our history. So we learn from it and we see the things that have been done that we should be ashamed of and that we should try to move forward and do better on. And so I wanted to ask you about your research into that and some of the topics that you bring up.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. What I wanted to do with the theme of this book was talk about that idea that we need to be careful to recall our history so that we're not in danger of repeating it. And in today's world where there is just so much acrimony, and in a world where it doesn't seem like we're able to get away from war and the militia and all of these sorts of things, that when I look back at the history of the American West, which is where all of my national park mysteries have been set so far, that sort of behavior is just the history of the American West over the last 150 years is just riddled with that kind of history. And so when I started looking at wanting to share Great Sand Dunes with people as a national park, I thought, okay, what piece of the history do I want to share as well? And right over the hill from the San Luis Valley along the Front Range occurred both the Sand Creek Massacre that people I'm sure are familiar with listening, as well as the Ludlow Mine Massacre, which people may not be as familiar with. And both of those massacres have, as you say, not necessarily necessarily receive the kind of attention and perspective that perhaps they deserve in modern Colorado, because it's not fun history to remember. And so I wanted to share those stories without them giving too much darkness to the plot, but also to kind of drive some of the darker side of what always occurs in a murder mystery. And so it gave me the opportunity to talk about the fact that, yep, there is bad stuff in the past across the American West and right here where I'm from, here in beautiful Colorado. And if we don't remember those things and face up to them, then we're at risk of repeating ourselves. And that's the last thing we want.
Yeah, I thought you really did a nice job of highlighting the point that the history of a place really shapes the people who live there. And all of that history, even when it's not talked about, it doesn't just disappear. It has still changed people in certain ways. And even when they don't recognize, living here in San Juan County with the history of Native Americans and their interactions with the government and the Spanish history, there's so much that has all combined over centuries of conflict that a lot of the kids, even though they don't really know the history of this area, because we barely focus on New Mexico history at all in public education, unfortunately,
right,
it has still so heavily influenced their interactions in the community and their history and how our community has developed over time. And they have no idea why things are the way they are because they don't know the history of this area very often. And I liked that your book highlighted that, because I think it's really easy to get lost in the everyday stuff and whatever is on media that we consume and not think about, how did we get where we are today? Why are things like this? And can we change them for the better? Hopefully.
Exactly. And that piece came specifically from this great meeting interview that I had with a gentleman by the name of Fred Bunch, who is the Chief Resources Officer or Ranger for Great Sand Dunes National Park. And during part of my research, of course, I always go to each park and seek out people and talk to different folks. He invited me into his office and showed me some fulgurites and talked about some of the physical aspects and the resources aspects of the park that he's responsible for. But then our conversation kind of turned a little bit, and he just started talking about the fact that I was asking him about himself, and he's born and raised in the San Luis Valley. And he started talking about the pride that he has for his place, pride of place for the valley, and the people who live there, and how proud they are of this. What's a harsh landscape. It's a tough place to live. Many, many days, Alamosa is the coldest city in the lower 48 state. The wind blows there a whole bunch of the time, and yet he's been there his entire life. He just loves it, and he spoke about it with such pride of ownership and of the fact that he's going to be there forever with these people. It actually changed how I developed to try to give a little bit more of that aspect to it, in addition to talking about, okay, we got to be careful of our history, but we also have to be really protective of and proud of our present, because that's how you turn away from massacres in the past and instead preserve and protect what we have in our national parks or in our own backyards going forward. And it was all from Fred Bunch. It was just wonderful.
I've had an opportunity over, I want to say the last year, for whatever reason, I've had multiple books dealing with national parks and their history and talking to different national park admin or rangers in various places and learning a lot about the history of parks and how they develop over time. And really interesting one about Mesa Verde. And it's been pretty fascinating to learn more about the effort to protect these areas, protect the history of them, and how that has shifted over time. And at first, Mesa Verde, my goodness, so much stuff was lost because protecting it wasn't necessarily the focus.
Exactly.
They encouraged people to take home souvenirs, and that was just oh my gosh, so crazy. But it's been interesting to see how some of that has changed over the course of even just the last couple decades.
You're right.
And like you're saying,
and encouraging, honestly.
Yeah. I did a unit with my kids of revisionist approach to history with Native Americans in the Southwest, and it was absolutely wild, and my kids couldn't believe it because I found it was an instruction manual for teachers in Colorado from 1912, and they actually taught kids that the people of Mesa Verde were white, and they had to be white because they were more advanced than any of the other tribes, so they had to be racially separate. And my kids were just what? Are you kidding me? I was look how far we've
Well,
come.
the age of eugenics. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really fascinating. And the timing is right dead on. I mean, that was eugenics and Woodrow Wilson and kind of the last big round of much of what we're faced with in the conservative movement today, honestly. Hopefully not as deleterious as what happened a century ago, but some of that same backlash that's occurring. And that's what I wanted to talk about in this book is history wants to come around. And if you're not careful, some of the worst parts of history will come around. And it's worth understanding that and looking forward with the rearview mirror clearly in your sights as well.
Yeah. I always enjoy that I learn a lot when I read your books, in addition to the fun mystery.
And people listening, I will encourage them to understand that, yes, you and I are talking about some serious topics here, but first and foremost, these books are meant to be classic Agatha Christie type or whatever murder mysteries where we've got suspects and we have got the classic solve going on, the gamesmanship as we work through it to figure out who done it. They're first and foremost meant to be really entertaining. And then the learning about the park, the educational parts about the park, and the discussions about history and massacres are absolutely, handful of pages in the book that hopefully are just of interest, but are certainly not meant in any way to overwhelm what is first and foremost, I hope, from what I hear from readers, just really fun mysteries and entertaining opportunity to get to know characters and go along with them on a fun sleuthing mission.
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that, because I don't want to make it sound like it's all doom and gloom and heavy reading. It is a fun read.
Right.
I got through it really quick,
No,
too.
you're the one who's saying it, and I appreciate your saying it, too. That's exactly right. Yep.
But yeah, you get both. You get to learn a lot of interesting stuff, and then you get to have fun going along with the characters, trying to piece everything. I love when books hit multiple points of interest for me. I always enjoy learning new things and then just entertaining, because man, like I had a really, really rough week, and getting to spend some time with this reading over the weekend, it was a really great break from everything that had gone on.
That's what I hope for, because to me, that's what murder mysteries are meant to be. They're meant to be entertaining. We understand that we're entering a world where we are suspending belief for a period of time. So it's really fun for me to hopefully take a reader into that world and then create a believable story within this world of make-believe that we all understand that we're in. And so I'm very glad to hear that that was exactly what it sounds like you got out of it when you were reading.
Definitely. There's so much more to dive into with the book, and we'll leave that for readers to pick up a copy. When this is airing, it should be just about to come out or out within the last few days. Tell us where people can find you in the book.
Absolutely. It's releasing June 2nd, and it will be available wherever books are sold and in whatever form people enjoy. For the first time of my 10 mysteries, it's coming out simultaneously on audiobook June 2nd, as well as ebook and physical book, launching it at Maria's Bookshop here in Durango, where I'm at, on June 2nd. And then I'll be on the road for a couple of weeks through Colorado, and then finishing up June 13th at Amy's Bookcase in Farmington at the end of my tour. If any folks in the Four Corners area are listening and would like to attend either of those events, you're more than welcome. And then I always enjoy hearing from people who have read my books with any ideas for future books. So feel free to reach out to me at scottfranklingraham.com, which is my website. Learn lots more about all books that are in my series and about Torrey House Press too. I always like to plug Torrey House Press because they're a nonprofit environmental social justice publishing house that are doing great things, doing a lot of work with Fort Lewis College and the Native American writers, students at Fort Lewis and around the Four Corners. They're a wonderful organization. If people want to check them out, they're at torreyhouse.org.
Absolutely. And we had them on if you're interested in learning more about Torrey House. I want to say it was toward the beginning of the year. I can't remember the exact date, but we talked to them about how much funding they had lost recently from grants and national endowments and things like that. So if you're interested in learning more about them, go check out that episode. And there's all the ways that you can help support them and learn more as well.
And I'm proud to report that my books do really well by themselves. So people that buy my books, you're helping Torrey House Press in that way. And you're also helping to support through purchase of my books. You're helping to support all of these Native American authors and other authors that the grants that Torrey House gets are used to support as well. So either through my books or direct to Torrey House, it's a great opportunity to give to a wonderful organization.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy. And so thank you for fitting this in. Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. I appreciate the time, and I enjoy the opportunity to share my work with people. So if anyone wants to share any thoughts with me, I'd love to hear from you via my website.
Awesome. And yes, we will put a link in the show notes to make that quick and easy for people to come find you. But thank you so much.
Thank you, DelSheree.